Barry and Honey Sherman, Canada's wealthiest murder victims, were found dead in their Toronto mansion on December 15, 2017, strangled and staged in a macabre tableau beside their indoor pool. More than 8 years later, the case remains unsolved. No one has been charged, and a $35 million reward sits unclaimed. The evidence overwhelmingly points to someone who knew the couple, knew the house, and took their time. Yet Toronto police have been widely criticized for a botched investigation that may have let the killer slip away. What follows is everything that points to someone on the inside, and why, 8 years later, no one has been charged. Welcome to Bad Things. Two billionaires, a real estate showing, and a gruesome discovery. Barry Sherman, 75, was the founder of Apotex Incorporated, one of the world's largest generic pharmaceutical companies, with 11,000 employees, selling 260-plus drugs in 115 countries. His estimated net worth at death was $4.77 billion Canadian dollars, making him roughly the 15th richest person in Canada. His wife, Honey, 70, born in an Austrian displaced persons camp to Polish Holocaust survivors, was a philanthropic powerhouse. Past chair of the United Jewish Appeal Campaign, active on the boards of Mount Sinai Hospital, Baycrest Center, York University, and the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Together, they had donated over $50 million to the United Jewish Appeal alone, and tens of millions more to hospitals and universities. The Shermans had listed their 12,000-square-foot home at 50 Old Colony Road in North York for $6.9 million, and were planning to build a new $20 million mansion in Forest Hill. On the morning of Friday, December 15, 2017, housekeeper Nelia McCartingay arrived at approximately 8:30 a.m. using a real estate lockbox key. She noticed something unusual. The burglar alarm was off. The first time in 3 years she had ever seen it deactivated. She didn't see either Sherman, but assumed they were out. A personal trainer and a furnace technician also entered that morning. None went to the basement. Around 10:30 a.m., real estate agent Elise Stern arrived with agent Wai Dong Zhao and prospective buyers for a showing. As the tour reached the basement pool area, Stern opened the door and flipped on the lights. She saw two shadowy figures slumped on the far side of the pool deck. She later told police she initially thought the Shermans were doing some weird yoga thing. Zhao's clients thought it was a bizarre Halloween display or a sick joke. Then reality set in. Barry and Honey Sherman were side by side on the pool deck floor in a semi-seated position, their legs outstretched, their backs to the pool. Dark men's leather belts were looped around their necks and tied to the metal safety railing surrounding the pool, holding their heads upright in an eerily deliberate arrangement. Both were fully clothed in winter coats that had been pushed back off their shoulders, effectively restricting their arms. Barry's right leg was crossed over his left. He was still wearing his glasses. Rigor mortis had fully set in. The 911 call was placed at 11:44 a.m. Police determined both had been dead for approximately 36 hours, placing the time of death on the evening of Wednesday, December 13, 2017, likely between 9 p.m. and midnight. That evening, Barry had left Apotex headquarters around 8:30 p.m. after sending a routine email at 8:13 p.m. Honey had arrived home after 8 p.m. after a shopping stop at Bayview Village. Her last phone call placed at 6:21 p.m. to a friend, during which she sounded completely normal. Neither communicated with anyone again. The theory that poisoned the investigation. What happened next has haunted this case ever since. On the evening of December 15th, Detective Brandon Price stood outside the mansion and told reporters, "I can say that we did not observe any signs of forced entry to the building, and so at this point, Indications are that we have no outstanding suspects to be going after. While he never used the words directly, the implication was unmistakable. Over the next 24 hours, police sources told the Globe and Mail, Toronto Star and Toronto Sun that investigators believed Barry had killed Honey, hung her body, and then ended himself. The Sherman children, Lauren, Jonathan, Alexandra, and Kaylin, were horrified. They issued a public statement calling the theory irresponsible and noting their parents shared an enthusiasm for life and commitment to their family and community totally inconsistent with the rumors. Within days, they hired Brian Greenspan, one of Canada's most prominent criminal defense lawyers, who assembled a parallel investigative team led by Tom Klatt, a retired Toronto police homicide detective with 70-plus murder investigations under his belt. They also retained Dr. David Chiasson, the former chief forensic pathologist for Ontario, to perform a second autopsy. Chiasson's findings demolished the murder theory. He discovered two distinct sets of ligature marks on both victims' necks, wider marks from the leather belts used to prop up the bodies after death, and narrower marks beneath them, consistent with a thin cord or garrote. The actual murder weapon. He found marks on both victims' wrists, indicating their hands had been bound, likely with zip ties, though none were found at the scene. Toxicology showed no drugs in either body. Since the actual murder ligature and the bindings were both missing from the scene, taken by someone, was physically impossible. Dr. Mary Case, chief medical examiner for St. Louis County, put it bluntly. If this is a murder by hanging, it will be the first one recorded in history. Greenspan's team invited Toronto police to attend the second autopsy. They declined. It took more than a month after the private team shared Chiasson's findings before police finally met with the pathologist. On January 26, 2018, 6 full weeks after the discovery, Detective Sergeant Susan Gomes held a press conference. I believe that they were targeted. We believe now, through the 6 weeks of work and review, that we have sufficient evidence to describe this as a double homicide investigation. The damage, however, was already done. Former homicide detective Mark Mandelson said of Price's initial statement, "I'm quite sure if that officer could walk those words back, they would, because that set the tone for everything that flowed from that point on." Why every piece of evidence screams inside job. The forensic and circumstantial evidence consistently points toward a killer or killers with intimate knowledge of the Shermans, their routines, and their home. Here is the full picture. No forced entry and a deactivated alarm. The house had multiple access points, several doors, a basement entrance routinely left unlocked by the Shermans, and a window left open for ventilation. A real estate lockbox with keys was installed on the property. Detective Sergeant Gomes stated, "With no forced signs of entry, it's possible someone had a key, had access to the lockbox that held the keys, or was known to the couple." The family's private investigators later claimed police missed evidence that the front door lock had been tampered with, though police never confirmed this. The alarm being off when the housekeeper arrived was unprecedented, suggesting the killer either knew the code or disabled it. Elaborate staging that required time and knowledge. The bodies were arranged in a deliberate, almost ritualistic fashion. The Toronto Star's Kevin Donovan discovered that the positioning of the bodies nearly matched two 1970s-era junk sculptures by artist Leo Sewell displayed in the Sherman basement. Human figures sitting on speakers. Barry's crossed leg position mirrored one sculpture. Donovan concluded, "I can't see how it doesn't mean something." Whoever staged the scene knew the decor of the basement. Moreover, a cleaner told police that Honey never went to the basement because she had bad legs. Yet her body was there, meaning it was moved. Her cell phone was found in a bathroom that friends said she never used, suggesting she may have fled there seeking help before being overpowered. A killer who didn't rush. The elaborate staging, moving Honey's body from another floor, positioning both victims to echo the sculptures, removing the murder ligature and zip ties, arranging the belts, indicates the killer spent significant time at the scene. The suspect captured on neighboring surveillance was in the vicinity for approximately 29 minutes. There was no evidence of a panicked escape. Missing evidence that proves a second person. The garrote or cord used to actually kill both Shermans was removed from the scene. The zip ties used to bind their wrists were removed. Someone cleaned up after themselves. A victim cannot take murder weapons with them. The surveillance footage gaps, and the walking man. The Sherman home itself had no working security cameras. The one camera in the pool room was non-functional. Police collected over 4 terabytes, approximately 2,000 hours, of footage from neighboring homes. In December 2021, 4 years after the murders, police released a 22-second clip showing an unidentified person walking on a snow-covered sidewalk near the home on the evening of December 13th. The individual was 5'6" to 5'9", dressed in dark clothing and a hat, with a distinctive gait, kicking up their right heel. Police classified this person as a suspect, but could not determine sex, race, or age. Critically, no cell phone signal was associated with this individual, suggesting professional-level counter-surveillance awareness. Despite hundreds of tips after the video's release, the walking man remains unidentified. Another anomaly. A neighbor's camera captured an unidentified car in the Sherman's driveway on December 14th, the day after the murders, the day before the bodies were found. A man was seen sitting in the car for up to 15 minutes, then going inside the house. This footage was handed to police, but not publicly discussed for over a year. On the same morning, a mysterious 911 call was placed from or near Old Colony Road at 9:45 a.m. A uniformed officer visited a home 10 doors away in response. Police dismissed it as wires crossed. The connection between this call and the unidentified man at the house has never been explained. What do you think? Someone walked past that house on the night of the murders, left no cell phone signal, and has never been identified. Do you think the walking man is the killer, or just a witness who was never found? Feel free to discuss it in the comments. We try to read every single one. A constellation of suspects, but no charges. Barry Sherman was, by his own description, the most litigious man in Canadian pharmaceuticals. He had been involved in over 1,200 lawsuits. In a 2001 book, he mused, "Perhaps I'm surprised that someone from a big drug company hasn't just hired someone to knock me off." The list of people with potential motives is staggering. Kerry Winter, Barry's cousin, launched a $1.5 billion lawsuit claiming a share of Apotex, which a judge dismissed as fanciful in September 2017. On December 6, 2017, exactly 1 week before the murders, Winter was ordered to pay Barry $8 million plus $300,000 in legal costs. Winter gave explosive media interviews, claiming Barry twice asked him in the 1990s to arrange a hit on Honey. He admitted to fantasizing about decapitating Barry. He failed a lie detector test on CBC's Fifth Estate about the hit claim. His alibi, attending a Cocaine Anonymous meeting and watching Peaky Blinders, is unverifiable. He acknowledged he could easily have left work unnoticed. However, police have never publicly named Winter as a suspect. Jonathan Sherman, Barry's son, owed his parents $50 to $60 million in loans for storage property investments. Barry had demanded repayment just 2 weeks before the murders. Barry's will stipulated all inheritance would go to Honey, with children receiving only if she died concurrently. A detail some observers noted as a potential motive. His sister Alexandra reportedly accused him of involvement, leading to estrangement among the siblings since 2019. Jonathan denied involvement. "I'm not going to kill my dad because he needs $50 million to get through a crisis." Police conducted phone and cell tower analysis on Jonathan, but found no hard evidence linking him to the crime. Frank D'Angelo, a Toronto entrepreneur and filmmaker, had received extensive financial backing from Barry for 15-plus years. Sherman had been pressing D'Angelo about losses of $500,000 per month. D'Angelo was among the last people to speak with Sherman by phone on the night of the murders. He denied involvement, saying, "The worst thing that could have happened to Frank D'Angelo is Barry dying." Business rivals were legion. Apotex had lost a $500 million court case involving a drug patent weeks before the murders. The company faced a US FDA import alert after fraudulent data was found at an Indian plant. It was named in a vast generic drug price-fixing scheme in the US. A fired chemist had been sued for allegedly stealing millions in drug formulations, and Teva Pharmaceutical filed corporate espionage accusations against Apotex. Barry reportedly owed approximately $1 billion to other companies at the time of his death, with little intention of paying. Former FBI profiler Brad Garrett stated the staged crime scene indicated a personal motive, not a random or purely transactional killing. Former FBI profiler Julia Cowley agreed. The Shermans were almost certainly murdered by someone who knew them, and not an international hitman of mystery. Kevin Donovan's conclusion was the most direct. Did Barry and Honey Sherman know their killers? I believe so. He has suggested the murders may have been an attempt to have a conversation that went horribly wrong. Police have said they have a working theory and an idea of what happened, but have never disclosed it. In the 2023 Crave docuseries, Donovan stated he has a theory about who did it and believes police may share it, but the evidence is insufficient for charges. A botched investigation and a $35 million dead end. The criticism of Toronto police has been relentless and specific. Police did not vacuum the crime scene for trace evidence, a basic step in any homicide investigation. They failed to properly examine all locks and entry points. DNA and fingerprints were not collected in a timely fashion. Even months later, people who had been with the Shermans the day they died had not been swabbed. Police did not review surveillance footage from Apotex or the neighborhood for 6 weeks. When the private team finally gained access to the house in late January 2018, they found at least 25 palm and fingerprint impressions that police had missed. The Toronto Star editorial board called the investigation badly bungled from the get-go. It's worth noting that Toronto police were simultaneously investigating the Bruce McArthur serial killer case, which consumed enormous resources. The $10 million reward was announced in October 2018 by Greenspan. In December 2022, Jonathan Sherman increased it to $35 million, likely the largest reward in Canadian criminal history. Over the course of the investigation, police have received more than 1,255 public tips, plus 343 via the private investigations tip line, conducted 250-plus witness interviews, obtained 41 search warrants, and submitted 150 items for forensic analysis. The reward remains unclaimed. The house at 50 Old Colony Road was demolished in May 2019 at the family's request. The lot sold for $4.25 million in 2020. The family's private investigation formally closed in December 2019 after 2 years. Jonathan Sherman later launched his own separate investigation, hiring retired Toronto Police Inspector Doug Grady, US-based Confidential Global Investigations, and former Manhattan prosecutor Robert Seiden. His 3 sisters distanced themselves from this effort. 8 years later, one detective and an AI tool. The current state of the investigation is sobering. As of 2025, only one full-time detective, Detective Constable Dennis Yim, is assigned to the case, and since February 2025, he has been ordered to split his time with other administrative duties. In court testimony in 2025, Yim made a startling admission. "I'm playing blind. I don't know where I am on the field." He testified that police have yet to clear any of the persons of interest in the case, and stated his overall belief that the forensic science results do not point the investigation towards any specific identified suspect. As of April 2024, Yim had reviewed only 600 out of 14,000 electronic files recovered from a December 2022 search warrant. He has begun using Microsoft Power BI, an AI-powered analytics tool, to help process the evidence. The investigation has expanded internationally, with inquiries in at least 5 countries, likely following what Donovan calls a trail of money overseas. Yim pointedly refused to confirm or deny whether genetic genealogy is being used, noting, "Things can change on a dime sometimes. You look at how science has advanced. Who would have thought that cases unsolved for so many years all of a sudden are getting solved?" Alexandra Kravchik, speaking on CBC Radio in December 2025, said, "So far there has been no justice for them and no closure for me and my family." She added, "I'm encouraged to a small degree that the case is still active, that they haven't said, 'We can't solve this.'" Journalist Anne Brocklehurst of Courthouse Stories offered perhaps the most cutting assessment. "While I still think this case is solvable, I do not think it will be solved by Yim analyzing thousands of documents alone in his office. This is a scenario straight out of The Wire, where some unfortunate cop is sent to the basement and assigned busy work for years on end." She noted that phone and tower dump data analysis took police 3.5 years, a task that should have taken days to weeks. Apotex was sold to New York-based private equity firm SK Capital Partners in a deal that closed April 2023, valued at an estimated 3 to 4 billion Canadian dollars. Meanwhile, the Sherman family has fractured. The Sheckman cousins, children of Honey's sister Mary, are suing for access to a trust potentially worth over $500 million. And the Sherman siblings themselves are divided, with Jonathan no longer on speaking terms with the other trustees. And now we want to hear from you, the loyal viewers of Bad Things. 8 years on, one detective, a $35 million unclaimed reward, and still no arrest. Do you think this case will ever be solved? Or do you think someone powerful enough to commit this crime is powerful enough to stay hidden? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The Sherman case is not merely unsolved. It is a case study in how wealth, power, and institutional failures can conspire to let a killer walk free. The forensic evidence, dual ligature marks, missing murder weapons, bound wrists, no forced entry, a deactivated alarm, an elaborately staged scene that echoed sculptures in the victim's own basement, points unmistakably to someone with intimate knowledge of the Shermans' lives. The suspect on surveillance carried no cell phone. The killer took their time. They knew the house. They may have known the art. Yet 8 years on, the investigation has narrowed to a single detective splitting his time with other duties, sorting through 14,000 files with an AI tool, unable to clear even the persons of interest. The $35 million award, the largest in Canadian history, has produced no breakthrough. The home has been demolished. The private investigations have wound down or fractured along family lines. Barry Sherman once wondered aloud why no one had tried to kill him. The answer, it turned out, was that someone eventually did. The question of who remains the most expensive unanswered question in Canadian criminal history. Do you want to bring bad things with you wherever you go? Our episodes are now available as a podcast. Look us up on your favorite podcast app and listen to the most truth-seeking true crime podcast out there.